I usually remember 60s music pretty well. In fact, in my community group where you're the pastor at the church, Jess, I sing typically one song a week.
Oh, no, don't tell me that.
Yeah,
No.
but it's not the full song. I'll give them a verse or stanza, something like that,
I need to
because
apologize to the group.
something in the Bible study will bring up. I said, "Oh, that reminds me of this song." And what happens is Eric used to said, "I haven't heard it," so he goes to YouTube and he turns it on, and we listen to part of it as well. So,
Man,
just want you to know what's going on in your community groups as we are studying the Book of Daniel.
there's some things I don't want to know. I gotta go. I gotta have to go apologize to all of them now. I don't know why you told me that.
I think they like it. I really do. So I could Google it, but I'm not going to. I don't remember what year Sly and the Family Stones had their song "Different Strokes for Different Folks." You don't remember that one?
No.
Okay. I'm not going to sing the rest of it, but this is about different types of pastors. Every pastor is a different type of pastor. Every pastor is wired differently. I used to have this perception that pastors were always kind of the same, holy, 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 and quiet and gentle. And then I got to know pastors and I realized they aren't all the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're as different as humanity is different. So we're going to talk about that and what does that mean for their leadership. Different pastors are wired differently. We'll look at it in two parts, this episode and the next episode. And as always, you heard it in the bumper, but thanks to Cheney and Associates for being our sponsor. Let me remind you that the entire research project is now available, that Cheney and Associates funded as the presenting sponsor. We're looking at church members, or those who are faithful church members versus those who don't attend at all, and what their different perceptions of the church are. It's a fascinating study. I think you'll enjoy it. It doesn't cost you anything, so you can get it and just download it and make sure you look at it. Okay, Jess, we're going to cover 8 different types of pastors. These are not neatly categorized. Many pastors have elements of all of them. It's just not one bucket or another.
Sure.
But whether you get ahead to the next episode, because we're going to do 4 today, and then 4 in this episode, and then 4 in the next. As you look to the 8, did you see yourself in any of those?
Yeah. Well, the listeners right now don't know what they are, but I look at them. I see parts of me in all of them. I and that is more my wiring anyway.
You're eclectic. You're jack of all trades.
Yeah. I do kind of have that piece of it. I'm not just wired one way. And so, but I think some pastors are going to, cling to one or two of these, where I'm looking at it and going, yeah, I could see qualities, more predominantly in me in 3 or 4 of them. But I do think as we go through this list, with the exception of one, a pastor needs to have all of them in some,
Exactly.
or has a church staff that needs to have them all.
Exactly.
And so these aren't meant to be, this is who you are, go live it out. This is just, honestly, I think it's a way, and I love this because it just brings some self-awareness to who you are as a pastor. And I'm big on knowing who you are as a pastor. I've done many in church planning world, they make you do it. Right. They make you learn yourself. And I've done a ton of these. And there's really one eye-opening moment I had in learning who I am. I was meeting with a mentor, Dr. Brad Wagner, and he was teaching me about this test that I took and about different personality traits. And he goes, Jess, you're really odd because you love details, but you hate the time it takes to receive the details because you're driven. He goes, he did this. He said, you're constantly telling people to do this. Like, come to me, go away. Come to me, go away. Come to me, go away.
For you who were listening, he had one hand up that said stop and the other hand up that said come on.
Right. Sorry, not everyone's watching the video here. And it was eye-opening to me because it is. I'm like, give me your 6 bullet points and then get out. That was more I want to know all the 6 bullet points. I might not do anything with it. I just want to know it, and then I need you to go. And that sounds a lot harsher than what it is. But that self-awareness, right, and where I had to work on, which is more inspirational, more relational of my side, that these are key. And so as we're going through these, maybe don't use it as like, well, which one am I? Maybe use it as, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are these different typologies? And what does that mean for me and my church? What does it mean for me and my staff? when I saw these, I was like, that's good. That's how I want it. That's how I'm approaching it, at least. Maybe that's not how you wrote it. That's how
No,
I'm approaching it.
there is no one way that I wrote it. I use this typology in consultations and coaching. I don't always tell a pastor that you are this,
Right.
but it helps me to have a framework, and it's just become kind of natural. Let's look at the first four. We'll
Yeah.
look at the next four next time. By the way, these are in a paywall article, so if you're a member, Church Answer Silver, Gold, or Platinum, you can go to it. If not, we're going to go over it in the podcast, so you'll don't think you're going to be cheated. We'll go over all 8 in this podcast and the next. But if you want to become a member, we'll give you a link there. It's a $9.97 month membership, and it has a lot of other things. But that article is a paywall article. But I want to talk about, first of all, the pastoral care pastor. They like counseling. They look forward to hospital and nursing home visits. This is one where I see you the least.
Yeah, and again, it's not a natural bent. I love caring for my people. Don't get me wrong, I love caring. It's in me, but I tend to lean other ways first before I lean towards pastoral care, which is why I have an elder team that one of them in particular is dynamic at this, and so I understand that's not one of my natural bents. But yeah,
Doug?
that's it. That's it. Yeah. But again, this is an element. I said every
Wine
pastor.
Bramage. I knew that. Wine Bramage.
uh, this is an element that every pastor has to have. They're because when people do call and there is a time of need, it's not like I shun them away.
Sure.
I'm more likely to be reactive than proactive with this.
I get it. I get it. You're not going to seek counseling clients in the
Correct.
church.
Correct.
I get it. How about the second one, the preaching preferred pastor? I met with this pastor and about 3 months ago. This pastor who was that he was really more 2 and 3. 3 is the doctrinally driven pastor, and there's sometimes some connection between those two.
Right.
He wanted to preach and teach and preach and teach, and he said his goal was 36 years ago to have a church. He had a church of 350, and he said he wanted to grow it by getting them to be better disciples, and they would naturally reach people more. So that's how he did it.
Yeah.
And so his church of 350, as he was retiring, had 32 people left.
Oh.
No outreach at all. No outreach
Okay.
at all. He spent all of his time preparing for his sermons and teaching doctrine.
You got me on that one. I thought that was going to be a success story.
Let's talk about the preaching preferred pastor. That you like the act of preaching, but you often think that the sermon preparation time can be laborious. Is that fair?
Not laborious, because that I think has a negative connotation. It's exhausting, the sermon prep.
Well,
But it's a
exhausting
good
is positive.
exhausting.
That's good.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said exhausting's positive. We'll use that one.
Yeah, it's a pouring out, and so it takes a lot of energy. The actual sermon delivery does not bother me. It used to, but it doesn't bother me. The sermon prep. So I when I'm ready, when the sermon's done, I'm like ready to go preach it, and so there's an excitement there. But again, a lot of pastors,
That
that
drives them.
is their main focus is getting on stage, and that's where they're going to do their discipleship. That's where they're going to do their pastoral care. Again, we all got to have this element as pastors. We got to have some. You got to prefer preaching. I hope it's part of being a 1 Timothy 3, a qualification of an elder, and so that has to be it. But there are some pastors that are very focused on that.
Yeah. And the danger, of course, is spending too much time in one to the neglect of others, regardless of which one it is.
Right.
Similar to that's the doctrinally driven pastor. I call this in the article I wrote on a first cousin to the preaching preferred. The preaching preferred pastor many times wants to teach doctrine, wants to teach truth. And so there's some close connection there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe not, because I think there are some preaching preferred pastors that aren't necessarily doctrinally driven.
Oh, that's a good point.
So, but I do think the doctrinally driven pastor is going to spend a lot of time, even beyond Sunday morning. They're going to make sure their groups are doctrinally driven. They're going to make sure their membership is doctrinally driven. They're going to be talking about their leaders. They're going to all align doctrinally, and so there's going to be a lot of time spent making sure that. To me, this is more of a culture piece in a church.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come out through the preaching. It's going to have a teaching aspect as well. But I think this is going to be more culture based, and so the pastor is going to be focused on making sure that culture exists within the church.
I'll give you another pastor where I have been working with. I asked him to send me his discipleship path what he has expectations of his church members, minimal expectations. Sometimes I call them minimal viable expectations. And everything was content. There was no action. And I brought that
Right.
to his attention. He said, "You're exactly right.
Yeah.
I never thought about that." He wants them to learn this. He wants them to learn that. And then they become disciples. Well, you got to do as well as learn.
Right.
Both and, not either
Yep.
or. Finally, the activity-driven pastor. Oh, I remember this pastor so well. It's been several years, but he always had to do something. And so he said, he said, "I need you to meet me at church at 6:30 on Sunday." I was there for consultation. I said, 6:30, service doesn't start. First service into 9. No, I need you to be there. I want you to observe everything I do. At 6:30, he goes to the mailbox. He gets the mail, and he opens every piece, advertisements and all. And it takes him an hour. And I'm thinking, why did I just lose an hour's sleep to watch him open the mail? That's a true story. It may be extreme, but it's true. Some pastors just have to be busy doing something.
Right.
They can't stop.
Yeah. Of the four, the pastoral care, the preaching preferred, doctrinally driven, and the activity driven pastor, this is the one of these four I find myself kind of leaning towards. I like to be active. I like to be continuing to do things. So that can be great because you can get a lot done. You can get a lot done. My negative part of it is I don't delegate as well as I should. I'm changing that. Again, that self-awareness piece that we talked about at the beginning. But you got to have it. You got to, as a pastor, you got to be activity driven, because if not, it can lead to the fifth one, which I know we're going to cover next.
Well, we'll talk about the fifth one when we come back next time. This is the Church Answers podcast with Jess Rayner and Thom Rayner. We're talking about the different types, different personalities, different leanings of pastors. The reason we're talking about it is so if you are a pastor, you can have an awareness to make any adjustments you need to make. All of them need to be a reality in your life. But one, you don't know what that one is? Well, you got to come back for the next episode of the Church Answers podcast. As always, thank you, Cheney and Associates. YouTubers, thank you for watching and for viewing. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to us. All of you who are listening on podcasting app, we'd appreciate a rating and review as well. And we'll see you in the next Church Answers podcast.